can't believe you drove to the cemetery for this online reading. And now I get everyone's dead loved ones here with me. Are you freaking kidding me?
Hold on, I'll show you.
I didn't say get out of... Oh my Lanza. Well, first of all, I'm glad that you're here. So first of all, your mother passed?
Yes.
Okay. So that would have been your grandmother and your mom, correct?
Right.
Okay. And also when I'm connecting, did you also lose the child as well?
Yes.
Okay. Please know that soul is there because right away your mother steps forward with this child that's there, that's on the other side. And then you also lost your son as well?
Yes.
Okay. Your son's also here. I got all the family with your mother. So first of all, I have to tell you, I want to start right away with that baby that had passed.
Okay.
So anytime a child leaves this world, right, they don't leave this world alone. And even if that child's passed and didn't know anybody here in this world, right, on the other side, they're still reconnected with their family. So I saw that when that little baby had passed away, your grandmother was there to receive that child and to be there with that child. And please know that your grandmother is taking care of her on the other side. This was really tough. They were showing me there was issues with this child forming and developing here in this world. So do you know if her lungs had even developed, if she had lungs here in this world?
She was, I don't know, she was 37 weeks in gestation. She wasn't born. She was born already deceased.
Please know that that soul is there. Because I kept hearing that she was saying to me, there was no way I was going to be able to breathe. There was nobody where I was going to be able to breathe. She's showing me her being wrapped up in a blanket. So did you wrap her up in a beautiful blanket, or did your daughter put her in a blanket here in this world?
Well, my son, when she was buried, we gave her a funeral, and she was in beautiful christening gown and wrapped in blankets.
She says to me, thank you for the blankets. Thank you for the blankets. So know that when you wrapped her up in beautiful blankets, and that's how you laid her to rest, her soul knows about that on the other side. And what's so beautiful is this. She says to me that her parents get to hold her one last time here in this world. And she wants to thank her family for holding her and the way that you all showed her so much love. So even though that child never got to have a life here on earth, right? Her body was born here in the physical world. It was delivered, I should say, but she was never able to have a life. She still knew the love that you all felt for her. And she's acknowledging that. Because souls will bring things through, right? And they'll bring things through that'll help us to heal. And what's crazy is that even though she was so small, she still looked like there should be nothing wrong with her.
Right.
And that was what was so tough. And what she was showing me is that it was all on the inside, that there was lungs that didn't develop. There was no way she would have been able to breathe. She showed me all of these things and about being born with these complications. So even if she went full term, what she's showing you is that there was no way that she would have been able to develop, breathe on her own, do any of these things. But it doesn't matter. Her soul is still there and with you. And it's funny because your mother's like rearranging heaven. Like first she brought this little girl, then she showed me that your son's there. Now all of a sudden she's pushing your father through and speak like, here, okay, now you need to speak. You need to speak.
Yeah.
And first of all, your father's going like this to me. He's like, Matt, he goes, I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know how to talk about this. He says, first of all, he thinks this is so amazing that he's on the other side with all of these people. And what I can tell you is when I'm connecting with your dad's soul, this is a man who had suffered before his passing here in this world. He says to me, Matt, he goes, tell my family I wasn't good with medical. I wasn't good when it came to doctors and things like that. I got very nervous, he says. And your father used to talk with his hands because he's going like this to me. He goes, Matt, he goes, I was like this. I was like this.
Yes. Yes.
Is that what he used to say to you? Because he keeps saying, go like this. I was like this. I was like this. He's saying.
Yes. That you did that perfect.
He says to me, Matt, he goes, I want them to know that I didn't know if I was going to make it. When I found out I was sick, I got very scared. When I'm connecting with him, he tells me that he was taking his medications here in the physical world. Do you understand that? He says to me, Matt, and I didn't lie. He says, I took my medications. I did what they wanted. I did what they told me. He says, because I was so afraid of dying and leaving this world. But he says to me this, he says, Matt, I couldn't help it. He says, I just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and my body just gave out on me, he tells me. I know how your dad died. Even though he was having a problem in multiple parts of his body, he actually tells me he kept battling infections here in this world.
Yep.
He keeps telling me it was infection after infection after infection. He says, and Matt, I got so weak. I got so weak that I couldn't do anything anymore, because he even shows me that he had a hard time walking. He had a hard time going to the bathroom. He had a hard time doing all of these things, because I see your father and he keeps showing me him. I actually saw there was a time when he had fallen here in this world.
Many times. Yeah.
And he wouldn't want to admit it. Like I see him saying like, oh, I just tripped, or I just got unsteady. But really it was that his body was so weak, and he needs you to know that, because he didn't want any help and he didn't want to admit that this was actually happening to him. He says to me, Matt, he says, please let my family know that the one thing that I love so much is that they stood by me, supported me, and loved me. He says, because their love is what got me through everything. And he wants to thank you for that. I got to come to you as his wife. Do you know how much that your husband loves you?
No.
He says to me, Matt, he says, I watch over her every single day. He says, and Matt, I would be nothing without her. Your husband wants to thank you for the way that you stayed with him, for the way that you supported him, but also he wants to thank you for the way that you still talk to him, still to this day. He tells me, Matt, do you know how many times I catch her in heaven looking at my pictures and holding on to my pictures, he tells me? And it's funny because when you think about your husband, he goes, Matt, he goes, I can see things that I didn't see here in this world. And your husband tells me that now that you look back on him, you always think about your husband being younger. Like he says to me, you would just like, I feel like you were just looking back at pictures of him being like, oh my God, he was so sexy back in the day. Like my husband's such a good looking man. Look at how good looking your father was. Is that true?
Yes.
He says to me, Matt, let her know that I look like this in heaven all the time, he says to me. But I got to tell you something else. Your husband was also a flirt here in this world when I'm connecting with him. He says, Matt, he says, I loved women when I was here. He says, I flirted with women. He says, I was a gentleman. He says, but my wife was the only one for me, he said. My wife meant everything to me. And he's bringing that through. He says to me that what he wants you to know is this. He says, Matt, please tell my wife that I am looking after her every single day. And he says, I want to thank her. He says, for the beautiful care that she gave for me, the love that she gave for me, every single thing that she still does for our family and for our daughters, he tells me. So know that every day that goes by, his soul is right here. And know that this is his way of acknowledging in spirit. Not only is he in the car with you right now, but he's not in that car because you're at his graveside. He's with you always, and you need to know that. He knows that you kept clothes of his because he's bringing up the clothes that you still have of his here in the physical world. There's actually shirts of his. He tells me that you have.
Yeah.
And he says to me, Matt, he says, what I also want her to know is that I've been visiting her in her dreams. So have you gotten dreams of your husband?
Yes.
He says, I come back every night to check up on her. And sometimes I even give her a visit in the dreams. So know that that's real. I'm also hearing Anthony as well. Was there Anthony or Tony?
Oh, my girlfriend's husband. He was good friends with him.
He keeps telling me in my ear. He's whispering, say Anthony's there, say Anthony's there. So please know that that's his way of letting you know that Anthony is on the other side with him, that they are safe and at peace. He says, and Matt, he says, he's going like this. This guy is such a great guy. He's such a good guy. He's telling me, Matt. Oh, I was so excited to see him. All right, I'm going to leave you guys with that. Thank you guys so much for being here.